Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt. I've been doing this podcast since September of 2012, and boy, are my lips tired. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Anne Marie is dealing with that bug that's going around that's been bugging people, and so we're wishing her well and hoping that she'll be.
Anne Marie is dealing with that.
Ooh, we got a big delay going on here. Oh, I hope the filtering fixes that. Wow. Okay, I think it went quiet for a second there. Every once in a while, Chloe, we have technical issues that show up here because the energy is so high around here. So, I mean, we haven't seen that one in quite some time. That's a new one. But hopefully it's not going to give us a problem today. First, let me say welcome to the program, Chloe. When I first saw that you were coming on, I have to admit there were a couple of thoughts that went through my mind. First, the issues that we're going to be talking about are issues that affect a lot of people. But there's also a flip side to it that I noticed, that I've been noticing a lot lately. I'm curious to know what your take is on it. First, welcome to the program. I haven't actually said welcome. Hi, how are you?
Thank you. It's really cool to be here.
And you're connecting to us from Mallorca, which is fabulous. I mean, this is exciting. Like, wow. I love that. But the thought that had occurred to me is there are a number of course, this happens a lot with mental health terms. They tend to enter our space, so to speak, and then they start affecting the way we think about things and so forth. And there are a number of these diagnoses is what they really are, but they become catchphrases after a while that tend to kind of impinge upon our way of thinking and so forth. And one of them is narcissism. Now, narcissism is a very specific diagnosis in the psychology community, but it has gotten to the point now where it is being used to describe almost anybody who doesn't behave the way we want them to behave. So I kind of want to start off by just describing in a little more detail, what are we really talking about with narcissism here? Because this is a key component of what you deal with. And I want to make sure we're like, drawing the right boundary line, so to speak.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a little bit complicated because of course there's narcissistic personality disorder. And then, of course, we're all on a scale of narcissism,
One degree or another, yeah. I mean, it's just part of being human.
Yeah, exactly. So when we have unhealed wounds, we act in a toxic way. We act in a narcissistic way. So yeah, it's used a lot at the moment. It's a really fashionable term.
Very fashionable, to the point that I guess the reason I bring it up is terms like this, they can become so fashionable that they start to lose their meaning after a while. Yeah. If you know what I mean, right? I mean, after a while, just because we watered them down so much, what are we really talking about? Are we talking about an actual, really, truly toxic? There's another word, toxic. That's another one of those terms that's kind of gotten overused. But is it a really, really horrific situation that's going on, or is it something that somebody just wants to complain about? I mean, it's a fine line. It's not an easy line to define.
Yeah. It is. And, if you're in a toxic relationship, you're also toxic because you're facilitating it, and then the gaslighting makes you react in a toxic way. So you're engaged in a toxic relationship and can be narcissistic too. So yeah, I mean, and there's all these personality disorders, and of course a lot of those personality disorders, not just narcissistic personality disorder, but the other ones too, mean that those people also show up narcissistically as, narcissistic partners. So, I mean, I work with, because there's actually not much you can do with somebody with NPD, because they've locked into this persona so strongly that they won't introspect enough in order to break down the ego and do the work. So I work with the people that can do something about the situation. So I work with the people on the end of that kind of abuse.
And there's a whole storyline that leads up to why you ended up doing that in the first place. So why don't you kind of lay the foundation, lay the groundwork for us? How did you end up doing this?
Yeah, so it's a really long story for me to get all the way back to the narcissistic abuse. So let's start with how I got into working with doing transformational hypnotherapy because I had a medical background. I'd done 11 years of university, been to medical school in Hungary, then dental school in Spain. Then I started having children with my partner at the time, who I'd known since I was 7 years old, was my best friend. And in a shocking turn of events, he ran off with a girl from work, a 23-year-old girl from his work. Yeah. And then, you know, just didn't want anything to do with the children, really just disappeared.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, that is heartbreaking to be in a situation where you can see your life mapped out in front of you. You know, you've got your 2 children, and then I was pregnant with my 3rd baby through all of this heartache. And he really kept me hanging on through the whole pregnancy, saying, I don't know which of the 2 lives I want, and I'm going to be in therapy, I'm going to decide. And I was in denial because I was, you know, I'm from my parents divorced. I'm from a broken family. And I was like, no, this is not happening. This is a blip, you know, like you go through all these stages of anger and denial. So, you know, I was just not sleeping. I wasn't present for my baby boys. I had 2 boys under 2, and I was pregnant with my 3rd. And there was this one day where I'm sitting on my green velvet sofa, just in my head. I was obsessing over them on Instagram. Where are they? What are they doing? Because they were all over the world together. And then this thought went through my head, and that really woke me up. It was like an epiphany. I started thinking, what will become of my life? You know, I just couldn't see anything past this moment. And then this thought that really woke me up, that was, who's going to want me with 3 children? And in that moment, it was like, don't you dare do this to these kids. I could see this trajectory of, if I carried on thinking and believing that, like I could see the effect it was going to have on the children, what they would believe, the burden they would carry of my happiness. And then I could see this out, but you could decide that the universe has an amazing plan for you and that you're a great package. And so it was like, right, I have to go on this trajectory no matter what happens. And then I went down a rabbit hole of studying the law of attraction and studying the laws of the universe and studying the subconscious mind, which was all really new and exciting for me because I'd been in like this whole medical world, and I'd been diagnosed in my teens with chronic fatigue at 14.
Wow.
Clinical depression at 17, put on antidepressants. And so it was through just really going down this rabbit hole of the law of attraction that I saw this training for rapid transformational therapy. And it was like this light bulb moment. I was like, I should have always been doing this. This is what I should have always been doing. It was like I just finally understood, like, this root cause medicine. It was like, this is the key to, you know, root cause resolution of these diseases, these labels, the depression, the PMDD, the anxiety. And then, so I jumped into this training and I just loved it. And it was in that training that I learned about premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD. There was a masterclass in there by one of the graduates who had healed herself through the training by having practice sessions on herself. And that's where I learned about PMDD. And I thought, that's what I must have had. The whole, you know, when I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue and clinical depression, that must have been, because premenstrual dysphoric disorder is basically PMS on steroids. Women think they're going crazy. It feels like you're being possessed, and you have a cluster of symptoms for like pretty much half the month, a week to 2 weeks, depression, anxiety, rage, intrusive thoughts, suicide ideation. And so then I just became really passionate about shouting it from the rooftops, guys, you know, this thing that we're told by the doctors, you've got a chemical imbalance or it's genetic, it's so disempowering. And I just wanted to wake women up and go, this is, you're being called to transform these mutations in your belief system from your youth, because 95% of our beliefs are created before we're 7 years old. So it's all stuff that's like misperceptions of children, that you're not enough, that there's something wrong with you, that you're too much. And so then I started working with women with premenstrual dysphoric disorder and depression. And I was noticing this pattern of them being in narcissistic relationships and them having maybe had a narcissistic parent. So then I went into the training of learning to be, of studying trauma-informed coaching and becoming a narcissistic abuse specialist. So that's what brought me to all of this. And it just, you know, we become magnets for these partners when we're empaths, when we're sensitive people, and when we have these limiting beliefs, and we just fit together like a puzzle in a way. Our wounds kind of magnetize us to these people. So it's transforming those wounds, healing them, and transforming the beliefs that keep you small and accepting less than.
It's really interesting to hear you describe that, in part because of the emotion in your voice, because the resonance that these experiences had with you, it comes through loud and clear. I mean, in a really, really big way. And I just know from my own experience, I'm sure this is true for most people. When you have those kinds of resonances happen, it almost doesn't even matter what you encountered. It's it. You've just found it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'd done all these years, 11 years of university, and I really didn't like studying. But when I found it, I was addicted to learning about it. Like, it was like I just couldn't stop. I'd stay up all night reading about this. And I couldn't understand how this isn't taught at medical school, because it's like, come on, the subconscious mind is running every process in your, you know, in your physiology. It's root cause medicine, and we've got this innate wisdom within us. We're in and out of hypnotic states, you know, every day, all day. And we can use this to really transform our lives. And the other thing that I really woke up to was the hormones. You know, women are programmed to hate on their hormones. You know, we've been calling it the curse. And really the hormones are our innate wisdom. They are this truth serum that every month will show us any unresolved past stuff that we need to alchemize, that we need to transform. We need to look at the subconscious root cause of, to expand our potential and to realize our purpose.
I can hear what you're saying in two different ways. One way I'm hearing it is the way that you're offering it directly, overtly, which is this is a wonderful wisdom that comes through. And the other one is through that curse lens you're referring to, because it comes to you every month, whether you want it or not. You have to keep dealing with it over and over and over again until you finally deal with it. So, I mean, you can see it either way. It's pretty easy to come to either conclusion.
Absolutely. But that's if people render you helpless and powerless. And I think that in, you know, the indigenous tribes, they knew about this wisdom and they would work with it and they would lean into whatever was being shown to them. And then in the last 100 years with traditional medicine, you know, they just want to attenuate the pain rather than actually go to the root cause, resolve it and transform it, and say that we can expand. So
yeah, root causes are a big deal for me in many ways, in many areas of my life, because I have become more and more aware, not just with medicine. We've done a lot of beating up of medicine. I won't do that today. But in large numbers of fields, we have kind of, as a human society, we've kind of lost touch with finding root causes. We will jump at the first symptom. I mean, that's what happens with traditional Western medicine a whole lot of the time. But that experience, we seem to have like shifted over to like 25 other areas of our lives. It's like an ongoing thing where we avoid root causes. Let's fix the symptom. No matter what kind of symptom it is, let's just fix the symptom.
Yeah.
And it drives me nuts because we can just drive ourselves crazy going round and round in circles, chasing symptoms of all kinds, not just medical symptoms, any kind of symptom.
Yeah, but I think we've just been programmed that way. You know, I'm really aware of it when I'm speaking to my children, that I don't call, you know, if, for instance, my daughter has this chronic backache at the moment and I'm exploring whether it's an emotional thing, right? At the same time, I want to make sure that we get an x-ray and we check that there's nothing anatomical there going on. And so I'm really conscious that I don't call this anti-inflammatory medicine, that I just say it's something that's going to relieve the pain for now, because it's like we're programming our children to to think the doctor's going to fix you. It's like,
Mhm.
no, you've got the power to heal. You've got the power to reduce the pain, you know, but I want them to understand there is this thing, and this is not the be all and end all. Just got to be really careful what message we're sending the children, because we grew up in a society where we handed our power over to the doctor all the time.
Yeah.
And so we live in a society that loves the pharmacy, wants to find a symptom to take a pill, and this is just how we're programmed. But we've got to wake up.
Yeah,
You know,
there's a lot of programming there. Yeah, absolutely.
we're incredibly intelligent organisms, and these symptoms are just messages for you to lean into and get curious about it.
I've been noticing it for myself. For most of my life, I've been very, very healthy. I've been very fortunate in that regard, but I've also been, you know, I guess I had the right mindset or whatever. But in the last few years, I've dealt with a number of things, and not surprisingly, they all kind of started after the divorce that I experienced after a 23-year marriage. I mean, at the time, I would have said no. I mean, I'm just going through a horrible thing there. It has nothing to do with all this other stuff, but no, not really. It actually does have to do with this other stuff. And to give you an example of it, I'd been experiencing headaches over the last year. Now, I've never had headaches throughout my life. I've never had migraines, never had any of that stuff. And lately, I've been getting headaches, and they were getting worse and worse. And I was looking at nutritional cures, and my MD was useless. The MD had, no, you're fine. No, you're healthy. No problem at all. And then I ended up at my physical therapist, who had helped me with an Achilles issue. And she helped me look into what they call TMJ and cervical spine issues. And sure enough, had found that there was some stuff going on there. So we've been working on that. That's a long-winded way of describing how I got to the point where I'm doing exercises that she's having me do. Plus, I do therapies with her when I'm visiting with her once a week. And what I'm learning from doing those exercises is all the different ways I have, through my emotional state, shifted my body posture in order to put myself into a place where I'm experiencing physical pain. I never would have realized I was doing that.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah, of course. But this is stress, right? It's the stress that made you get into, and most diseases, very, very few diseases that are genetic, like really, like I'm talking like 3%. Most diseases, a majority are stress-related diseases. And just like you said, and all the TMJ stuff, right? Because we're stressed and we're doing this. So
it's also the hunching thing, because that's what the cervical spine is. It's the hunching over. So you're basically creating a problem with your neck. But where does the hunching over come from? Well, it comes from the way you're emotionally dealing or not dealing with stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, it's to do with the emotion you're in and the posture that you take. Of course.
Exactly. Yeah. And you don't even realize you're doing it. That's the part that's mystifying. How did I not know I was doing it? And yet I didn't. It had to be pointed out to me.
Yeah, but this is what I say to people, you know, this is because when I was diagnosed with clinical depression, I was sent for talk therapy with a counselor, and I'd come out of the session more upset than I went in, you know, and every week it was like same time, same place, and then you come out crying your eyes out and you don't know what to do with it. So this is why when I found rapid transformational therapy, and it was root cause resolution at a subconscious level, because you're doing it in hypnotic brain states, it was like, yes, amazing. Because if we knew what our problems were with our conscious mind, we wouldn't have the problems.
That's anymore. Right. It would be easy.
Give yourself some credit. So you're an intelligent being. It's unconscious stuff that you've been carrying a long time.
So I think we've set it up enough now. We have to actually start defining what this transformational therapy really is, because I mean, it sounds pretty exciting at this point. So give us a little bit of a background on it.
So the rapid transformational therapy is like a 2-hour session in a hypnotic brain state, and it involves regression, going back to the root cause of the symptom. So in my 8-week program, I'll do 2 of those. And the reason being that after this 2-hour session, you'll go away with a recording with the new empowering opposite beliefs pertinent to that session. So what we're doing in the 2-hour session is getting to the absolute root cause. And we do this by regressing back, asking your subconscious mind to show you a number of scenes, all to do with the root cause of the depression, let's say, and we'll find beliefs to the effect of, I'm bad, there's something innately wrong with me, I'm unlovable. And because of these beliefs, our subconscious mind then creates our perception through which we see ourselves. And because we're humans and we're wired to connect, when you've got beliefs like this, there's like this fear of being rejected, right? Because if anyone sees me as being bad, then I won't belong. I could be rejected by my tribe, right? Because we have these tribal minds. And that's the ultimate fear. And so our body puts us into freeze response. And in freeze response, you'll find depression, chronic fatigue, dissociation. And first we'll go into fight or flight response, which is anger, anxiety. When we reach the threshold of fight or flight, then our body protects us further by putting us into freeze response. So we pinpoint the beliefs and we reframe them with a number of tools. We do a lot of inner child work. We do the reparenting, we do parts work, because these are parts, the anger's a part, the anxiety's a part, the depression. And so we really make sure that you have reframed the meaning that you meant, right? You use it, as a child, you are in a hypnotic brain state. Children are in theta, they're in hypnosis. And the mind learns by two ways, hypnosis and repetition. So we're coming at it from all angles, right? We're doing the work in hypnosis. And when you go away from that session, you'll listen to this 15-minute recording now with the new empowering opposite beliefs to really cement those new neural pathways. And you'll listen to that for 3 weeks. And then we reassess and we see what's left. And we tend to have like a fight or flight response left. Maybe rage is left if we're working with PMDD. And we do the same again for the second month. This is the subconscious work. And meanwhile, we're also doing the conscious work. We're doing metacognitive psychology to get in charge of your thoughts, because you are not your thoughts. And we're doing the polyvagal work to tone the ventral vagus nerve, to reshape your nervous system at a neuroception level. And we're doing mindfulness. It's just changing your whole way of being on a conscious level and a subconscious level so that you can have absolute freedom. But you can imagine they've come to me to be free of their symptoms, but now they're set up with this incredible subconscious blueprint, and magic happens in their lives, right? Because suddenly they've turned all those limiting beliefs on their head. They're getting pay rises, they're letting go of toxic relationships, they're manifesting beautiful relationships. Just magic starts to pop off in their lives afterwards. So it's just gorgeous.
So what we're talking about here is a process that we initially come at it because we have a particular condition, symptom, something that we're dealing with directly. But what we end up doing is, to borrow a phrase that's been overused, we end up healing ourselves on a broad spectrum level.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's that those are the side effects. What amazing side effects to have.
Yeah, right. Yeah, usually we're used to counter indications rather than indications, counterindications being all the different side effects of things. Yeah. And we think that they're all going to be negative. The classic one being you take the seasickness pills, and one of the side effects is seasickness or nausea. So, we're used to that kind of thinking. We're not used to the idea of side effects being positive, being helpful. No. That's like, well, that happens, you're lucky. That's all.
Yeah. Warning, you might find your life purpose doing this.
Yeah, right. Oh my God, we can't have that. No, that would not be appropriate. So yeah, that's pretty exciting. That's very exciting. I can see why you would get so excited when you first encountered this. Like you felt like you'd encountered the Holy Grail or something.
Yeah, totally. It was like I should have always been doing this. Why didn't I find it sooner? But I'm just so grateful that I did. And now I love helping other people find their purpose work. And you can't see that if you've got beliefs like, I don't matter, what I want doesn't matter, I have no choice in my life. And these are childhood beliefs that you're manifesting everything in your life now from. So I just really believe so clearly now that these symptoms are calling you to expand. You're just meant for more, and you're just being shown you need to lean into this stuff and get curious. And so anytime anything shows up in your cycle, this is your innate wisdom. You're a cyclical being as a woman. This is your innate wisdom showing you, hey, there's something else to alchemize here, and just do it. Don't wait for it to get louder and louder and louder, because it does. The symptom will just get louder and louder and louder until you look at it. It wants your attention.
It's funny too, because you used I don't remember the exact phrasing, but the gesture was you're addressing both the conscious and the subconscious levels, and that's certainly true. I mean, I can tell that that's true. But it's one of those phrases when you hear it, it almost just sounds like a throwaway phrase. You don't actually grasp just how big of a deal that is to come at something from both sides. I mean, you sit and think about it and you say, how many therapies, how many modalities, how many practices do we have that attack both sides, that really come at it both ways at the same time? There aren't a lot of them. It's a fairly short list.
Yeah, because most people, I suppose, just stick to their modality, whereas I've gone, well, they've got to know about their nervous system. They've got to understand how their organism works. They've got to do the polyvagal tools. They've got to understand the metacognitive stuff, how to get in control of their thoughts, because after 3 minutes of being on a train of thought, your body starts to react physiologically. Yeah. So we've just got to, this stuff really should be taught in schools, actually, like you need to know how your organism works. But at the same time, we've got to change the subconscious blueprint that you took on. It wasn't even your choice. You just acquired it from being in the womb. You were already making beliefs about yourself. So let's start choosing what to believe about ourselves and watch your life transform.
And anyone who has tried to take control of their conscious mind without taking control of the subconscious mind knows what that particular merry-go-round is like. Because I mean, you work your butt off. You put in the time. You try to make the changes. You do the 30-day program and so forth, and then you're right back where you started from, because the subconscious keeps saying, no, I'm in charge 95% of the time. Good luck.
Correct, because the subconscious mind is the emotional mind, and an emotion overrules logic every time. You can't.
I can't tell you how much that pissed me off the first time I realized that was true. I thought we lived in a logical universe. When I found out that we lived in a predominantly emotional universe, I felt betrayed. Like, what? Nobody told me this. Nobody explained this to me.
Yeah, I think I felt a bit like that too, because I've always been a really logical person. So then oh, right, okay. So this is why willpower doesn't really work. You can set your intentions, but then an emotion comes. It's like, woo, I'm taking over. Good luck.
Yeah. And you've done all this work, and then 5 minutes later, all of a sudden that old program is playing in the back of your head again. You say, wait a minute, isn't that what I've just been getting rid of?
Not so fast. You've got to go to the subconscious root and change the meaning that you made, because it's just, these are wounds in a sense that people will put salt in, and you've got to close them up. They're just childhood wounds that are still open, and you close them up, and then the salt can just fall to the ground, and it's all good.
Yeah. And of course, you work primarily with women. It actually applies to both men and women, but since you apply with women, let's talk in that realm. Talk about what it's like going through a program like this from the woman's perspective. You especially made reference to the hormones, the 30-day cycle, all that kind of thing. So let's talk within that framework. What's it like to go through this program?
Well, but it's difficult for me to say how it is while they're in it. I suppose it's different. Some people come out of the first RTT session and the depression is just gone, because there's 3 different ways to transform. Some people have this instant transformation. Most people have this progressive transformation as they're listening to the recording for 21 days. They already feel relief after the session because they've made the unconscious conscious. They've understood, and understanding is power. But then it's really important for them to listen to the recording. And then other people, which is very rare, until after the 21 days, they don't feel anything. I don't think I've really had anybody like that. And then they'll go, oh, that was weird. I would never have done that before. It's like a retrograde transformation. But most of them are pretty instant, and then they improve with listening to the recording. But when they come out of the 8-week program, what they say most often is, I'm worried that this is going to go away. It feels too good to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, well, it's only the beginning, because now you're going to be exercising these muscles more and more and more. And it's just your new way of being, which is the case. They've just learned these new tools. They've just acquired the new blueprint. And so it's just the beginning of their journey, but it feels like a rebirth. That's
a really important point. I want to make sure we touch on this one a little bit more deeply, because one of the things that psychology has taught us is that if you want to really change a habit, that's really what we're talking about here. We're talking about changing habitual ways of living our lives and what we're focusing on and how we're spending our time and so forth, so that we can achieve these growth states. But establishing a new habit can take 90 days. It can take 180 days. It can take a long time. I mean,
yeah.
I think statistically the mean is somewhere around 90 to 120 days before a habit really permanently changes. So even 8 weeks, 8 times 7, that's 56. So you got a 56-day period there. That's a lot of change that's gone on, but you got to keep going with it. Otherwise it doesn't stick.
Yeah. I mean, the subconscious work is really taken care of in that 8 weeks. The conscious work, of course, you've got to keep using the conscious tools. It's your new way of being, like catching yourself when you're going on this train of thought that's going to take your vibration down. It's like, oh, that's not where I need to be going. I'm going to choose one that's going to serve me and take, like we're normalizing a new level on the scale of vibration, right? Because we've normalized this kind of set point down here. This is normal and familiar, and the mind loves the familiar. But we need to keep exercising the muscles, using those tools, and keeping ourselves more and more and moving on up as much as we can, and normalizing this new way of being, which becomes much easier when you've changed the blueprint, because the nature of your thoughts then transforms, because your thoughts are popping off from the subconscious programs 70,000 times a day. So,
So the takeaway here is twofold. The first part of the takeaway is you're not just committing to 56 days, you're committing to the rest of your life, but it also gets easier after the 56 days.
Yeah. I mean, I ask my ladies, my women, to listen to the recording for the 30 days, just because new research shows it takes 30 to 60 days to change a habit. We're doing it in hypnotic brain state, so it's much faster, but I say 30 days for the first one, 30 days for the second one. But in the training, it was 21 days. It is a lot of change, but it's for the better, because you're realizing why you've been showing up the way you have. You've got this list now of like malignant beliefs that were your core beliefs that you've been running from your entire life. So you're understanding why you attracted certain people, why you allowed certain behavior, why you reacted the way you did to certain things. You're getting so much clarity. A lot of people go, do you know what? I've just realized that my mother was a narcissist. They start to realize that their parents were actually really mean. They'd normalized that as love, you see, and then they attract partners that remind them, because the mind loves the familiar, and subconsciously you will be just drawn to what you normalized in childhood. So it's like a massive wake-up call. And then you get to do something about it. You just get to rewire your mind with a new way of being. So it's very exciting to get to the other side of that. And then obviously I don't just work with women. Then the husbands go, I want a bit of what she's had. And they'll come for a session.
Yeah, sure. Well, just because the woman's getting the growth doesn't mean the guy doesn't want to have it. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. I like that. I like that result.
Yeah, the relationship triggers, they just want to be better for each other. It's beautiful.
One of my favorite stories is somebody who she was trying to do some subconscious reprogramming. So she got Post-it notes, and she put these Post-it notes all over the place, all around the mirror in the bathroom and in the kitchen and all the places where they'd go to in the house, all these notes, the little messages to herself. And her husband was seeing the same notes. And as she was going through her growth curve, he was going through the same growth curve, because he kept seeing the same kind of input that she was seeing every single day.
I love that. Well, that's a great idea. Yeah, I asked my women to do that, and also to get a photo of them when they were, around 7 years old, 5, 6, 7, and put it somewhere, like on their bathroom mirror, so they can start bringing them into their world and telling them the truth about them, because actually that little child decided that she must be unlovable or she must be innately wrong. And so just to bring her into your life now and just keep telling her the truth about her. And it just brings that inner child work is nervous system work, really. Bringing her back to safety.
I have a friend who occasionally listens to the podcast. She's a dance partner, actually, in social dancing. And she made a comment to me about a month or two ago that she had recalled a program that we had done where we talked about doing mirror work, where you look in the mirror and you love yourself in the mirror and that sort of thing. And you do that on a daily basis. And the comment she made to me was she couldn't bring herself to do that. She couldn't even bring herself to do it once. Just trying to look in the mirror and say, I love you or something like that. Well, that was just far too much for her to handle. And I realized the way she said that, it's almost like I was watching her place a block in front of herself right there. Or perhaps reinforce one that was already there. It's probably more likely the case. And I'm thinking we probably do that a lot more than we realize that we do. So even though you and I are having this conversation where we're getting excited about this process of the transformational therapy and so forth, and listeners are perhaps getting excited about it too, I can imagine there are going to be some people who are excited about it, but they just don't want to take that step because they have that built-in belief that's stopping them from taking that first step.
Well, the beliefs become self-fulfilling prophecies, right? That, I'm different, it wouldn't work for me. I'm just wrong, so it wouldn't work. And so those limiting beliefs stop people. But I absolutely feel your friend who wouldn't do that, because that was me 20 years ago, right? I used to look in the mirror and feel nauseous. I was so disgusted at my appearance. I hated the way I looked. It would have been crazy for somebody to say to me, start looking in the mirror and saying that you love yourself. But, I think if we start actually just looking in the mirror and accepting ourselves, that's a good place to start and go, look, this is what I've been dealt, right? I came here as this, because I don't know. I think it's really normal for girls in their teens and their 20s, at least, if not even longer, to go, oh, I wish I could change this. If only I was a bit like, we start wanting to change everything. If only my nose was smaller. If only my bottom wasn't so big. And it's like, you just got to, there is no perfection that in this human existence. Just realizing that, if you keep reaching for perfection, it's a never ending finish line. You're never gonna get there. So just this is what I've been dealt. Now let me make the most of it. And I've got to start by accepting it and looking in the mirror and accepting it. And I'm enough. I'm enough. I'm enough. Over. And then, that's the beauty of really doing this work deeply. And then you can go, do you know what? I'm really proud to be me. I'm really grateful that I am me, actually. And just keep working on that. But I think starting with just accepting rather than, because I get it. I really get it. I was that person who would look in the mirror and didn't want to look at myself because I was disgusted with what I saw. And I think we've kind of normalized that, women in society. And so, good place to start. I accept myself. I'm enough. And then I love you. There's a beautiful book by Dr. Shauna Shapiro. She wrote a book. She's a mindfulness expert, and it's called Good Morning, I Love You. She was taught, I think when she was in India, perhaps, and she was taught to when she woke up in the morning to just put her hand on her heart and say, good morning, Shauna, I love you. And it was really difficult for her. So she started with good morning, and just that good morning, and then just working up to it.
What we're talking about here, I think, is how do you initiate dialogue with yourself if you haven't been having that kind of dialogue with yourself? Because we have internal conversations that go on, usually outside of our control, because we just kind of let them, spin out of control. But taking conscious control, that's not something a lot of us are used to doing.
No, and this is the biggest thing. Because you do have choice, right? You don't have control over what's popping off. They're just like corks popping off from your subconscious, but you do have choice to go, well, I'm not my thoughts. And you do have choice to go, oh, isn't that interesting? I wonder why I would think that about myself. And choose to go, actually, I'm going to think this. So you can get in control of your thoughts. And that's what I teach people. And it's such a big game changer when you decide to have a gatekeeper in your mind, because you have been having dialogue with yourself and you've been speaking to yourself like you wouldn't even speak to your own worst enemy. Yes. And you start realizing that there's an inner child in there that is lacking safety, and it's your job and only your job to make them believe otherwise.
Right.
And so start being nurturing, start being gentle, and just really just tune in and just correct yourself, the way your tone, the words you use. Just speak to yourself like you would a newborn baby. You just imagine you've been given this newborn baby, and now it's my job to build up the self-esteem of this little baby.
I guess one way to phrase it is, if we have a history, a lifelong history even, of not giving ourselves positive talk, of not treating ourselves well, not feeling well about ourselves, then it's probably safe to say we're not going to have overnight success. But that doesn't mean we can't take small baby steps toward that. That's basically what the acceptance part is that you're talking about. Acceptance is learning how to take baby steps toward greater and greater self-appreciation.
Oh my goodness. But those baby steps are so powerful, right? Because you layering them up, and can I do a bit more, and can I do a bit more? Those little shifts are so important. And the self-talk is a big one, and the acceptance, and all of these things together, they layer up.
The fun thing that happens too is that if you do this enough, even if you don't feel like you're experiencing success, and I've been through long periods of time where I didn't feel like I was getting anywhere, and then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you notice that, wow, I don't really know that I've done anything different today, but I feel pretty good. Where did that come from? In other words, the accumulation builds up over time, and then it's almost like there's a tipping point, and then after the tipping point, you kind of like wake up and say, wait a minute, something shifted here, while I was not paying attention, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, you've got to start speaking to yourself like, you're your own best friend. You've got to become your own best cheerleader. And we've normalized speaking to ourselves in a really judgmental way. And sometimes you've got to say to yourself, well, whose voice is that? And you'll go, oh, is it my teacher? Is it my parent? Is it my grandmother? Yeah. And we do this, it's almost like a protector part. Well, it is. If I reject myself first, then nobody else can hurt me, because I'm already down, right? I've already knocked myself down, so then nobody else can bring me down. Well, you have choice over what to let in. So allow yourself to be up. And then, if somebody says something that you don't like, you can leave that at their door, because that's their stuff. It's not yours. And you let in the compliments. I remember when I was in my teens and I was clinically depressed, when people paid me compliments, I just couldn't let them in. It wouldn't resonate in me, right? Because of the subconscious, it wouldn't resonate. So it was like, it just didn't come in. And then, but being hurt by somebody, oh, that resonated. It resonated with the nasty beliefs I was carrying. Now I know that. And I think we are in a habit of doing that. And when somebody said to me, you have choice to leave it at their door, you don't have to let that stuff in, I was like, I'm going to try that. And that's another little thing that you can do. And it's a little shift further to happiness and joy and abundant life.
Those are scary terms when you're in that first spot. But as you move down the road over time, they become possible. And then there's a certain degree of more likeliness that goes into it. And it's an interesting journey to be on, to if you can do it consciously and pay attention to what's happening with your progress over time, because it can take a while before you actually notice it. But if you can stay conscious and just keep noticing the improvements that happen, they start to paint a picture after a while. Not just a picture, they start to paint a video, they start to paint a movie. Yeah. And you're in the midst of the movie, you're living it while the movie is playing. You're doing both at the same time. There's no suspension of disbelief. You're believing. You are the believer. You're the believer of your own life. It's a fascinating thing to watch. It's a fascinating thing to participate in. I think it's probably the thing that makes me feel the most connected to this 3D physical life. Because for me, a large portion of my early experience was feeling very disconnected from everything, from everybody. The whole thing just seemed, the whole life just seemed weird. Everything just made no sense. There was not a whole lot of logic to it. Even though I believed in a logical world, I looked around and not a whole lot of logic going on.
What was it that didn't, that you felt different? What was that?
I didn't really feel connected to anything or anybody. I mean, I felt some connection. There was some family connection. There was some friend connection. There was stuff like that was going on, but it all felt very distant. It all felt like arm's length continuously. All of existence felt like arm's length. Plus, to kind of reinforce it, I'm a very, very tall man. I'm 6'8". And so I'm taller than everybody else, which gives me more distance from everybody else. So I even had that kind of distance. So everything in my experience was distance, which is really odd because I'm nearsighted, but that's another thing. But the point is that was, for the longest time, that's the way I just understood the world. But it also felt very isolating, very, kind of cold, kind of, it's just anything that's disconnected just doesn't feel as good, right?
Yeah.
As time went on and I discovered my journey, I discovered my own steps and path and so forth, which took me a lot of years to get there. That's when the connections started to feel more real. And so this process we were just discussing here, that's where life started to feel more real for me the more that I ended up doing these things we were talking about. That I actually felt like I was more part of it. There are many times I still don't really feel a part of life, but I feel a lot more a part of it than I used to feel. And that continues to improve year after year after year. So the connections come from how we actually actively engage in our own path story. Because that's what I've been trying to lay out here, this idea that as I go through life, as I experience my own story, as it becomes real for me every step of the way, and my interactions become real, and what I do has impact, and what other people do has impact, and there's a whole thing that goes on. There's a whole more than relationship. It's an interaction that goes on with all of the elements of life. As that goes on, I feel more and more connected to the 3D world. And an interesting thing goes along with that. The greater connection to the 3D world for me, and I think this is probably different for me than it is for most people, but my greater connection to the 3D world increases my connection to the 5D world, to the non-physical world. Because now I feel safe to have that connection. Before, I didn't feel safe to have that connection because I was still trying to deal with the 3D world.
Yeah. This is really interesting, because when you said that initially, that this work has led you to like greater connection in the 3D world, I was like, oh, because for me, obviously, it's the 5D world, like it probably would be for most people. So what was it, if you had to put this down to something, this disconnection in your 3D world, what would you say it was? If you could,
I can't tell you. I haven't figured it out with that level of granular detail. I can point to certain things. I mean, like you were talking about earlier, we can connect to things from our childhood. That's obviously where a lot of the stuff that we learn actually gets learned. And I can certainly point to things in my childhood that influenced me and helped to create that characterization. But I think ultimately, what all that really happened every step of the way here is that I for whatever reason, I felt a need to be distant from a very young age, and ever since then, I've just been catching up.
Yeah.
And even though I don't necessarily know what that thing was, I can't really point to any particular thing. It's not like I've ever been able to unearth through therapy or any other process. There's this one particular event that's where I became. No, I can't identify that. But even though I can't identify it, I can identify the process that's happened since then. So I can't really answer your question directly, but I can tell you can climb out of it. I've been experiencing that part very consistently.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So it just brought to mind a scene in regression that came up for a man that I worked with, who was the husband of one of my PMDD clients. And it was such a beautiful, exemplary scene. I want to share it with you because he went back to a scene of just being like a 6-month-old baby sitting on this carpet and just everything being so beautiful, the sun beaming in, just beauty, the colors, everything he was experiencing was just beauty, bliss, beauty, heaven. And then he'd look at the adults around him and they were like, why don't they see what I'm seeing? And he was like, he realized that it was like a different world and that he would have to leave this blissful world behind him in order to feel connected to them. He would have to start being more like them. And it was such a beautiful scene. It was such an insight into what happens to us, right? When we're programmed in that way.
Yeah. It's quite possible. I might have had a similar experience. I don't have any memory of it, but it's quite possible. It would make sense. It would certainly add up.
Yeah.
It's funny too, because as I think back, I mean, I can remember certain little flashes from very, very young, age 2, that kind of thing, age 2 or 3. Not a whole lot there. I do have one photo that my mom kept for many years and that I now have of me as a 2-year-old. And I'm now this was late 1950s. So I had 1950s garb on for a 2-year-old. But I'm wearing that kind of, it was like a cardigan kind of a sweater for a 2-year-old. And I have this look that makes me look like I'm about 7 or 8. I mean, I looked that mature, even though I was 2 years old. I think that in some way describes how I had already gone through this disconnection. And I don't really know how, but it's the closest I've been able to come to answering the question, because I wanted to know the answer to the question you asked. Like, where does all this stem from? And that's the closest I've been able to come. I've never been able to get closer than that one, but there's something
interesting.
something that happened. Yeah.
Because there's only really 3 things wrong with us fundamentally at the root of all of these limiting beliefs. And one thing is the I'm not enough thing, which is very common. The other thing is I'm different. I don't belong.
Yeah. And that fits a lot more for what my experience was. Yeah.
And then the third is it's not available to me, whether it be love or a successful business, just because of what you've witnessed around you. It's just not available to someone like me. So the I'm different thing is quite a common thing, but I love how you've explained it and your experience of it. It's fascinating. Yeah.
Well, you were inspiring it with the way you were describing both the transformational therapy and the different ways that people walk through it, the different ways that they use it to make changes in their own lives, and that's what made me think about it. But anyway, we digress. Well, I want to get back to where we were talking about your thing, and particularly the work that you do with women. Well, first and foremost, I want to make sure that we give people an idea of how, women especially, give them an idea of how they reach out and find you. In other words, if they want to explore this more, how do they have a conversation with you? Let's just start there.
Well, you can have a conversation with me. If you go on my website, which is Chloe Jimenez-Peters.com, or woundsintowings.com, which is my signature program, Wounds into Wings, that you can actually book a free 15-minute consultation with me, so we can start looking at where you're at and where you want to get to. And follow me on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, but I love Instagram. You can reach out on a DM there. And in my bio there, in my link tree, you'll see a few freebies. You can download an abundance hypnosis, an inner child hypnosis, and there's plenty of resources there. But my website's got loads of information on about your cycle and what actually happens with the hormones that make you go into like this self-assessment mode, and you just go into like this introspective mode in the middle of your cycle, and it is like I'm assessing where I'm at. And it just means that you become very close and personal with these limiting beliefs and start behaving from that place. And it's when you understand it, you'll want to transform it and alchemize it. And I'm here to do that for you. So yeah, reach out and let's get started.
I'm going to take what I don't think is all that wild of a guess, because it would match up with my own experience here. Like doing this show, obviously, I'll get contacts from listeners periodically. And I really look forward to those contacts. Like, oh, I got another one. Oh, great. And I get to read whatever it is that they were inquiring about or commenting on or something along that line. It gets very exciting. And I imagine probably the same thing is true for you when you receive a contact, somebody who wants to have that 15-minute session. Like, oh, wow, somebody I get to find out more about. I mean, do you have that kind of visceral reaction like I do?
Yeah, because I know that they're so aligned. I get excited, because I know they're aligned. I'm excited to know everything about them, because I like to know all the details and start putting the puzzle together. And then when we start the work, we take apart their puzzle that they put together with their child's mind, and we get to put it back together with their adult mind, with their higher self's mind. But yeah, I absolutely do. When somebody books a call or somebody wants my advice on a DM, yeah, I do. It lights me up. I love it.
There's like that personal connection, and it's about to happen, and you get really, oh wow, I get to meet another new person. I get to find out. That's what my experience is when I have guests like you on the program. Like, oh, I get to meet somebody new today. Who is this?
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, good
stuff.
stuff.
We're lucky that we do what we love.
It's true. It is true. Yeah. Well, we're lucky, but we also made the luck. We chose it.
We did. We chose it. Yeah.
Which is the only way to do it. A couple things that I want to do before we wrap up for the day. First of all, thank you. I want to tell you, thank you for sharing your story and what you do. Really, really fascinated by this transformational therapy that you do, because you found a way to combine both the conscious and the subconscious into one modality. And like I said before, that's fairly rare. I mean, I think all teachers, all modalities try in some way to tap into both, but you made it a priority. And I really like that a lot. So
I want people to leave my world with a really good transformation. So we go at it from all angles. Yeah. Thank you, Walt. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Glad to have you here. But there's something else I want to mention too, that I've been making it a practice to mention over the last couple of years, because I realized a few years ago that there's a major gap in our appreciation sphere. We have a lot of things that we appreciate in life. People are becoming more and more appreciative. I think part of it is learning how all this energetic, life, LOA, spirituality, all this kind of stuff works. People are becoming more appreciative. But there's one area that it's still this great big gap that we all kind of ignored, and it's right in front of our eyes, but we just don't really pay attention to it. And that's the fact that because of the nature of the 21st century and how the internet works and how our modern communications work, people are creating huge amounts of content for the good, content to help other people, content that came out of their own experiences. It's one of the reasons I do this podcast. It's why you came onto the podcast. It's why so many other guests come onto the podcast. It's why you do other podcasts. It's why you post on your social media. It's why you're putting out all this stuff, because you discovered something along the way that you like, wow, I got to share this with everybody else. And so you make it your life's mission to share it with everybody else, which is wonderful. But the part that I missed, that I noticed we're missing, is we don't get credit for that. And like, well, wait a minute. We should be getting credit for that, because this is important stuff. So that's why I like to say, Chloe, on behalf of those people you've never met, never seen, never will meet, never will see, who you've been helping in these different ways, and they've been producing results for those people in their lives that you don't even know about, on their behalf, thank you for what you're doing, because you're making a difference in their lives as well.
Thank you, Walt. Thank you. And same to you. Right back at you for opening up the channels so that, people can hear you and hear your guests.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah. Once I realized that we need to notice that more, that's when I realized that's the next level of appreciation. That's appreciating what we can't see. That's appreciating what we know is happening. We know the ripple effects are there. We just aren't giving it enough appreciation. So, okay. Let's do some.
You said ripple effect just as it was going through my mind. You see the one mind.
There you go. Yeah. I love it. Normally, I ask my co-hosts to summarize at this point what the big takeaway is in the show. Obviously, I can't do that because Anne-Marie is not feeling well today, so she couldn't join us. So I'm going to latch onto the one thing that grabs my attention. Then I'm going to ask you to latch on the thing that you think is the big takeaway. So I'll lead it off by saying, I think the biggest takeaway today is that you should, that it's a great thing to look for ways to attack, if you will, but deal with the problems that we deal with in life from both the psychological conscious and the psychological subconscious approaches at the same time. When you talked about it, I mean, talk about resonance, that resonated with me. Like, yes, let's really go at it. Let's not just come at it from one angle. Let's come at it from both angles. That was a really big takeaway for me.
All angles. Why not? Because you have choice. And that's my big takeaway, actually. Just when you said you have choice, you have choice. And I think actually from doing this work, you realize, oh, I have, like you're taking the blinkers off. You have choice. You have choice over what to believe, what to create, and you get to create a life that you love and do what you love and love what you do.
And that's a
thank you.
Beautiful thing that's coming through so loud and clear, because it's very clear you love what you do.
I do.
Yeah, very evident. So thank you very much, Chloe. Best of luck with what you're doing. And I hope you just continue to do this for many years to come.
Thank you, Walt.
And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.